I think I'm alive. Alright. Well, I wanted to lay out a couple theories I have here. First, I'm going to make sure my volume is. No, I don't want to do that. No. I don't want to do that. Please turn that off. Anyways, I hope there's sound. If somebody shows up, please let me know if there's audio, and I'll just start talking. Um, once I started looking at the world around me through the flat Earth lens, once I realized that it was possible. The whole time I thought I was living on a planet, that's spinning and orbiting the sun. My whole life I took that for granted, that I'm in outer space and that the sky goes under me and we're spinning and rotating or whatever and wobbling and tilting and fucking orbiting the sun, and all that stuff is going on. It's all been figured out. We're amongst many other similar realms that are also orbiting the sun. All of them different in the sense that we're in the Goldilocks zone where we happen to have like a atmosphere that sustains life, and we're just close enough to the sun where the temperature is perfect for everything to work the way it has. And so right there we're just like in this little pocket, where we're just lucky, that life happened to spawn on this one planet that we're on, and and then there's just all these wonders of reality where it's like the eclipses that we'll see, just like there's the explanation for the eclipse is that it's random happenstance. We just got lucky the way it turned out because everything's orbiting in such a way to where, and the distances all work out perfectly to where not only does the moon, line up perfectly with the sun on a cycle where it's like you can predict when it's going to happen because it's a pattern that's predictable. It's clockwork. That's what we model our clocks after is the sky and the way it functions. And so, you know, it's also just random luck of the draw where it worked out to where we happen to have a moon the size that it is that's happens to be the exact distance that it would need to be from the sun that's also the size that it is, that happens to be the precise distance from us from our vantage point to where when the moon happens to line up with the sun on his orbit that just occurred randomly because of gravity and just the way things all happen fall together, it just so works out to where every depending where you are on Earth, there's a cycle you can predict, and we've gotten all that data, and where it's like there's these cycles, we know when the eclipses are going to happen in what parts of the Earth, and it's all been mapped out, and there's patterns that have been, documented for eons, and like it's luck, it's just like coincidence basically that everything happened to work out that way to where the moon blocks the sun perfectly, and there's like this full eclipse of the sun where it gets dark during the day, and it's just this magic thing that happens. It seems totally hard to believe that it's just a coincidence the way that worked out. And then, not to mention the fact that like the alternative coincidence happens where it's like the full moon will be out at night, and we just happen to be just the right size and just the right distance from the sun to where when the moon's when it's all worked out, our shadow from our spherical Earth is cast onto the full moon. It does the same thing that the moon does when it happens to fall in front of the sun. Just randomly how this all worked out. Now our shadow happens to be the exact size, and based on the way things are all lined up, the sun being that distance and being that size and that much light, and our planet Earth being the size that it is with the distance and the angles and the trajectory of the shadow, it all works out perfect to where now the shadow is going to hit the moon and completely eclipse it the way the moon eclipses the sun, and it's going to do this on a cycle that's predictable, and same as the sun and the moon. We just happen to be in this perfect spot where these two kind of coincidences happen to line up. With all the measurements and all the sizes and all the random variables that came into play along the way. Like, for all recorded history, we've had this cycle of eclipses that we could predict because of the fact that it happens on a cycle. It has nothing to do with. I mean, it does have, it has something to do with the sizes of things and the distances and all that too, of course. But without actually physically measuring those those values, I mean, it's just an explanation. It's just a story or math. It has. If you haven't physically taken the measurements, then it's not. Then it hasn't been proven. It's more of a theory. Because there's all kinds of things that could be going on. If we're not busy going to these places that we're witnessing and actually, verifying the distances ourselves and like the sizes and if we're not actually doing that, then it's just a story that we've been told, and yeah, they claim to have gone to the moon and they're sending, crafts to the sun, but like what I realize is that I don't have to necessarily believe all that stuff, because once you see enough of it and you realize that it's theater, I mean, it doesn't check out a lot. It doesn't check out like intuitively. Like I don't, in my gut when I'm watching the moon landing, videos or whatever, and I just see all that. I mean, in my gut, I don't think that seems like what it would be like. Like if you actually made it to the moon and landed on it, you would hear it in their voice. They would be nervous, and there would be some. It wouldn't just be like, woo, we're having a good day out playing at the beach or something. It was like that kind of attitude they were having, like, but it wouldn't be like that at all. Like it, I mean, it would be scary. There would be some fear, It wouldn't be casual. You wouldn't be able to find anybody alive who would land there on the moon and be, and driving these machines, the LIM or for the first time, they'd never been able to practice this stuff in real life, these maneuvers that they had to do that was all simulated. And then when they got out there and everything happened to play out just the way the simulation was, and it was all easy, easy peasy, they just went and landed on the moon and everything worked out just fine. And, they didn't run out of air or gas. There's no, and there wasn't just a hint of fear in their voice. They were all just happy and jovial, and it just seemed to play out too much. It's just like theater, It's like well, good thing that all worked out, on live TV. Is that how reality usually plays out, though? I mean, like, it's just like because it's the government, they're just so well rehearsed and everything's been so well engineered, and it just turned out perfectly. There was no snafu, and it just became kind of like obvious to me at a certain point, like. It's just so convenient how their stories all work, It's like they made it to the moon 6 times successfully. There was one of their trips they didn't land on the moon. They had to throw that in there. Oh, when they do have some problems, now you're going to say that's theater too? Whatever. Like, I don't believe they went to the moon. That's the bottom line. And like, I didn't even believe that. I didn't thoroughly ever believe it, but like, I didn't really believe that prior to my being shown the possibility of the Earth being a flat Earth or a level planar Earth. Basically, the possibility of Earth being the way it's presenting itself to us. I mean, we all live on top of the Earth, on the Earth's surface. Everywhere we go on the Earth's surface, it's always going to be the same situation. All of us, all at the same time, we're all experiencing a planar Earth. We all know this intuitively. It's planar, everywhere you go on Earth, all at the same time, everybody's experiencing planar. If we're supposed to believe that we're experiencing that, although it is a sphere, it forms a sphere, but we can't tell because we're so small and the curvature is so gradual. It's a size thing, It's like, so just because of that, you don't really realize they're on a ball, but we figured it out, that we are, because we went to the moon and we saw that it's a ball, and, all the math works out with the sky observations and blah, 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 blah. But it doesn't look like that while we're on it because we're so small. you know, once I considered the possibility that that was just a story, like, because really, we don't, it's in the explanation that they give you. It's like you don't experience the earth as a ball. You don't have to live on it like that. You don't think about it like that as you're living on it, or it doesn't appear that way because gravity makes it all work. It works it all out for us, where it's like we can all experience a level planar earth while we're here. We don't ever have to worry about it being anything other than a planar. That's what we expect it to be. That's what it is, and it's because of gravity, is this force that somehow worked that all out for us, where our orientation is that we're on the outside of this ball, this pear-shaped oblate spheroid that's tilted and wobbling in such a way that creates night and day as we're going flying around the sun, which creates the year. And it's all been mathematically, and observationally all aligned, all, very astutely, all these observations and mathematics have all been very astutely put together to form a very cohesive model of the Earth. And so Earth has to be an oblate, pear-shaped spheroid that's tilted and wobbling. And the reason we can't feel that all those motions or measure those motions or see the curvature or measure the curvature with any meaningful degree of like empirical science, that's just because of a stack of excuses that we can use and examples where we can say, well, like if you jumped on a train that was going fast, would you land in the same spot that you jumped up from, or would you just land where you jumped from? Because you're already moving the same speed as a train when you jump, so the train isn't going to move away from underneath you. And it's the same as the Earth. It's like conservation of momentum or whatever. It's like, okay, either that or or the other answer, which is like, it's because the Earth isn't spinning out from underneath you. You don't got to worry about that. It's like either you're all moving at the same time. It's like either the helicopter is hovering above the ground that isn't spinning underneath it, and just the way it appears, or we're all spinning together. It's all spinning in unison, and you just can't tell because you're on it. It's a frame of reference kind of thing. Okay, but like, wouldn't you kind of have to leave the frame of reference to really be able to know that's what's going on? If you can't measure it and you can't witness it, yeah, it gets to that point where you sort of have to go, all right, well, if I have to like have my worldview, if I have to have so many excuses, to support my worldview, and there's so many caveats where it's like, well, it might seem like this, but it's this, like it gets to the point where it's like I feel like I have to like depart from reality in order to believe in it, and that's the key word: believe in it. I believed I lived on a ball. I didn't know that I lived on a ball. And so that's when I started seeing things through a different lens, the lens of just, objective reality. And I realized from the beginning that the whole idea of a flat earth debate seems to be the psyop, and like, channels like Jeranism that wanted to focus on the model, and wanted to preach that there was no that the sky didn't have two poles, like there wasn't two 24-hour suns on Earth, because that was the globe model, and he wanted to say, no, that's not what's going on. There's only a 24-hour sun in the north, and then we can't have a 24-hour sun in the south. That's not what's going on. You can't have that on a flat Earth, and blah 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 blah. And then the whole thing played out in the way where it's like he went and saw that there really was a 24-hour sun, and so now the Earth can't be flat, and it's just like, oh, that was really, it's starting to seem kind of staged in itself, the way that all played out. But maybe it was organic. It just seemed kind of convenient, for anybody that's like trying to push the mainstream narrative, for the whole flat Earth awakening thing to turn into what Jeranism has become, where it's like, well, okay, I'm going back to the globe. All that stuff I've been like tearing apart for the past 10 years. I'm just going to go ahead and patch it all back up. And it turns out the model's right, so it must be true. And so, but like without even, even waiting, like without even trying to put any thought into it, where it's like, well, perhaps there's just two poles in the sky. Why does that seem like such a, I mean, maybe you just had the wrong model in mind, like, or whatever. Like, maybe you should have considered the fact that there's an analemma that we can see throughout the course of the year. If you go to the equator, the analemma is an infinity symbol. It's equal loops, equal-sized loops in the north and one in the south. It's making that infinity symbol. If you at the equator, you're going to see it's an equal-sized loop in the north and in the south. Some people will say, "Oh, it's a bigger loop in the south, so it must mean that there's fucking." It's only a bigger loop in the south if you're in the north doing the analemma. If you're in the south doing the analemma, you're going to see the bigger loop in the north. So that people need to know that, because I've heard people try to trot that out as like flat Earth proof or something. Oh, it's bigger loops in the south, so it must mean that the, where you can go with that assumption. But the thing is, it's not. It's only a bigger loop because it's going further away from you. Like if you're in the south and you do the analemma, you're going to see the bigger loop in the north. So, and when you go to the equator and you see the even loops in the north and in the south, or even equal equator, you can rest assured that whatever's happening in the north is going to happen in the south. Regarding the sun's path. And so you would never even have to wonder whether or not there was a 24-hour sun in the south. You would know that there is, because it's a perfect infinity symbol. We live in a system that's it's like it's a clock. It's clockwork. It's what we base all our clocks and calendars off of, what we see in the sky. It's the only way we have is time. God had to invent time in order for consciousness to have any kind of meaning or significance. Without time, nothing means anything. There's no way. There's no significance. I mean, it's kind of a philosophical quandary, but like, really, I mean, time is what gives significance to this consciousness that we share, or whatever you want to say, however you want to call it. Worldview is quite important, and especially if your worldview is built on the assumption that this is all kind of like a coincidence, or just like a random happenstance. Just the way things all worked out is because of this force called gravity. It's like what do they call it? Like an emergent property, or it's like when things have enough mass. It's like the idea that it's going to bend space and time, or what, like this. It gets so abstract. I mean, it's like, so like everything has mass, and so what point does like a piece of mass become like the shape of a sphere, and you can go stand on it, and it seems like Earth? It's like the moon's big enough to do that on, apparently, because they went and landed on the moon, and it was just like a level plane when they were there. It's just like how Earth is. So you can go land on a ball that's floating in the sky, and and it's going to be like how Earth is, where it just seems like a level plane. So it just becomes sort of cemented in your mind, like, oh yeah, you can stand on a ball, a big enough ball. Little balls, no, you're going to fall off of the little ball, and it won't float either. But if it's big enough, it's going to end up floating out in space, and then you can walk on it like we do if there's atmosphere and there's all these other, things that have to happen. If it's in the Goldilocks zone, and where it's like perfectly warm and not too cold. I don't know, man. It just seems like kind of hard to believe that we've managed to evolve out of lifeless space debris that was just coalesced because of a big explosion that happened, for no reason, just because things were there. And I don't know. I don't like the idea of not having a creator. Although at the same time, I'm always like, well, then where did that creator? And the same question exists, which is like, well, where did that come from? I mean, like, is it just a long chain of gods? It just goes all the way up, all the way back again. I mean, infinity. I mean, how did this all happen? That's the question. That's why the flat Earth conversation is important, and it's interesting. Do I have sound? Nobody's even watching me. Oh well. I was gonna do some conversation about the moon, though. I was gonna get on that topic, but if nobody wants to watch my show, maybe I'll stop. The idea of the moon being an old sun really makes sense to me, because if you think about what we see in the sky, the sun is like the focal point of reality, and we all see what's going on with the sun. The sun has such obvious purpose, right? I wish I knew if I had sound. I have this problem where my phone will turn off the sound. See, yeah, I probably didn't have sound. I don't know. I won't know unless somebody comes and shows up and tells me that I have sound. But nobody's showing up. outside and have a cigarette, and hopefully somebody will show up and tell me that I have sound. Maybe all my people are over at Flatzoid's channel. I don't really like Flatzoid's channel that much these days. I mean, I don't know. It just, I don't like having to use the Bible as proof of things and just argue about the Bible. It seems kind of, Flatzoid gets on kind of he's sort of pretentious about things sometimes. He gets all like holier than thou. I'm gonna leave this sitting here. Hopefully somebody shows up. Maybe I'll start over. Because usually at least somebody will show up, but I'm not getting anybody. And sometimes I'll do that. I'll think I'm streaming, but I'll end it, and then it turns out I didn't have anything going. I might start over.